Hello again, my nieces and nephews. This is Uncle Rod. And this is my third video. This is going to be part two, Theory of Mind, the mammal brain. In this video, I want to talk a little bit about the mammal brain, how it differs from the reptile brain. In the second video that I made, I described a little bit about the difference between the mammal and reptile brain, with the reptile brain being the part that does most of the work inside your head, and how it's involved with the emotional aspects of human behavior, and how if it's presented with information that it doesn't like, it rejects it out of hand, not allowing your mammal brain to be able to process it. All right. In this video, I'm going to, at the end of it, I'm going to show some examples of mammal brain behavior. Some of it is fairly easy, I hope, for you to see that it's mammal behavior. In a couple of the videos, I'm hoping to show you the contrast between mammal brain and reptile brain in action. And I'm going to do my best to be careful not to trigger you in the videos, because the objective I'm after is not in the videos that I'm going to show you who's right or wrong, but that you can see some people are in mammal mode and some are in reptile mode in the videos. I want you to be able to recognize it when you see it. All right, so once again, the mammal brain is the part of the brain that I believe deals with reasoning, your reasoning skills. And it doesn't deal at all with feelings. It doesn't process them. It doesn't experience them. So some of the questions I want to ask about this model that I have is, and maybe you've thought about them as well, perhaps, is why is it that mammals have an extra brain, an extra mammal brain? I mean, and mammals, the order of mammals evolved originally from reptiles, and reptiles still have just the reptile brains. I want to know, what was the reason why that the mammals required an extra brain? Why wasn't the reptile brain good enough for mammals? Well, I have a partial answer, and I'm going to give you a better answer in a different video, but the partial answer is this. The mammal brain gives you an advantage, gives mammals an advantage that they can learn new skills from practice, whereas the reptile brain has a difficult, if not impossible, task of trying to learn new skills. The reptile brain is pretty much just driven by instinct. There's very little learning in a reptile brain. But as I said, in a later video, I'm going to discuss in more detail why it was that mammals needed a second brain. Another question I wanted to answer, and is, how can you tell when a person is in mammal brain mode versus reptile brain mode? Well, the answer is fairly clear. It's the behavior. It's if they're in a reptile brain, you'll know it fairly quickly because they're emotional, either strongly positive or strongly negative, but definitely in some sort of emotional state. Whereas if they're in mammal brain mode, it also becomes apparent if you watch them in action, watch them in action long enough. They have the ability, when they're in mammal brain mode, to think. So if you see them doing some kind of skill that requires them to think, then they have to be in reptile mode, because you can't reason with your reptile brain. They have to be in mammal mode when they're reasoning. They can't be in reptile mode when they're doing thinking. Third question is to deal with being manipulated and being played. How can you switch between mammal mode and reptile mode? I mean, how does that happen? How do you go from I'm currently thinking to now I'm feeling strongly about something? Well, I have an answer, and I think you may have experienced in your life as well. Is that it's just like the expression "poking the bear." If you poke somebody enough times, you could irritate them, and when they're irritated, they just switched into a reptile brain mode. Another way is if you give them enough stimulus to make them feel good about something, that also switches them into reptile mode. But of the two, feeling good or feeling angry, it's in my experience, and maybe it is in yours as well. Uh, Anger is so much easier to induce in a person. You just have to irritate them enough, and now they're switched into reptile mode and they can't think. But that also, for me, begs the question: how can, when somebody's in reptile mode, how can you switch them back into mammal mode? That is, how can you get them thinking again? I spent 6 years on that question. I struggle with it. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a psychiatrist. Uh, I had to think long and hard about this. The best I could come up with at first was look at comedians, because comedians are awesome at being able to communicate information to people without setting them off, which is a really powerful skill. But I'm not a comedian. I'd like to think I have a good sense of humor, but I'm no comedian. So if I wanted to switch somebody from a reptile mode to mammal mode, how can I do it? Well, the answer is surprising, actually. I mean, it boils down to, again, the mammal brain is the only part of the brain that does the reasoning. So all you got to do is to get the person doing something which requires the mammal brain in order to be able to proceed with the task. And it turns out counting is enough to do it. I've heard this thing when I was a kid that if you're upset, count to 10 or 20 or 100. And I always thought that was kind of a stupid thing to say, because why would counting do anything? Well, it turns out it's precisely the right way to do it, because the reptile brain can't count that high. It only can count somewhere between 3 to 7 things, and that's as far as it goes. It's not very good at arithmetic. But the mammal brain, on the other hand, can count an awful way high up. So if you want somebody to switch back from reptile mode to mammal mode, the way to do it is to get them to count. And that just, again, it requires the mammal brain effort to count. And as they proceed to count, the reptile brain emotions drop off, while the mammal brain clarity goes up with the counting. 6 years it took me to figure that out. I'm sorry, guys. I wish I could have done it faster, but I'm like I said in my previous video, I'm a simple-minded kind of guy. It takes me a while to figure these things out. Okay, so if my model about having 2 brains, the mammal brain and the reptile brain, are correct, I want to say something about consequences of this model if it's accurate. All right. If a person is going to get played, what's the easiest way to do it? Well, from this model, I would say that the easiest way to play that person is to play on their emotional side, because it goes right past the mammal brain into the reptile brain, which does not understand logic. You can feed emotional content, which to you, when you're in mammal brain, makes no sense whatsoever, and you dispel it as, this is nonsense, it's garbage, I should not pay attention to this. But if you can get past the mammal brain with emotional stuff, going right to the instincts, the person gets switched to reptile mode, and then they start doing things that they shouldn't be doing because they got played through their reptile brain. The first video I want to show you is from a talk that Mr. Alan West gave, in which a student, a member of the audience, a young woman, asks Mr. West a question. I want you to pay attention to her. Is she in mammal mode or in reptile mode? And then I'm going to show you what Mr. West's reaction to her question is. And again, I hope you can spot, is he in mammal mode or reptile mode? And then lastly, I want you to watch the audience's reaction. You can't see the audience, but you can certainly hear the audience. I'm going to ask you, can you spot that the audience is definitely in reptile mode?
So I have a quote from you here. It says, I think that they're meaning the Black Lives Matter movement, whole existence is just a liberal progressive socialist movement to make sure that they keep the Black community on the 21st century economic plantation that's been created by the left. Would you like to clarify that?
I can clarify it very easily. You can follow the money, and the money of Black Lives Matter goes back to a guy, George Soros, so that tells you one thing. And let me tell you, all lives matter. It's not just about Black Lives Matter, okay? Now.
The second example that I want to share with you is I'm not going to call it a debate or an argument. I'm going to call it a dialogue between Mr. Matt Walsh, who's a member of the Daily Wire group, who's having a discussion with a woman about the gender of chickens. Now, the reason why I bring this to you, context, is because Mr. Walsh can be somewhat of a controversial, possibly divisive figure, and I don't want to trigger you with that. Instead, I want you to focus on the behavior of the two individuals. I want you to see, can you spot that one individual is in mammal mode, whereas the other person is in reptile mode? And the question I have for you is how do you tell which one is which? What are the giveaways?
Male gametes. That's what makes me male.
No, your sperm don't make you male.
Then what does?
It's a constellation.
In reality, in truth, okay?
Whose truth are we talking about?
The same truth that says we're sitting in this room right now, you and I.
No, you're not listening.
If I see a chicken laying eggs and I say that's a female chicken laying eggs, did I assign female, or am I just observing a physical reality that's happening in the world?
Does a chicken have gender identity? Does a chicken cry?
Well,
Does a chicken commit suicide? Let's
What does that have to do
frame
with-
it because
Third example that I want to show you is a psychiatrist who's testifying at some sort of looks like congressional meeting, in which she's talking about gender ideology. I'm not going to show you the full video because I just don't have enough time in this video, but I want you to pay attention to her choice of words. And can you see that she is in mammal mode as opposed to being in reptile mode when she's speaking?
My name is Miriam Grossman. I am a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, author, and senior fellow at Do No Harm. I have been taking care of patients for 45 years. I'm going to use my time to respond to Dr. McNamara. First, I'm struck by her use of the phrase, sex assigned at birth. Sex is not assigned at birth. Sex is established at conception, and it's recognized at birth, if not earlier.
The fourth video is going to be an example of a dog who's carrying a stick, who's trying to navigate from one side of a bridge to the other. The reason why I bring this to your attention is because a dog is not a person, but is a mammal. And I want you to watch how this dog's mammal brain goes about trying to solve the problem of how do you get the stick across the bridge.
Come on, let's go. Come on.
In this next clip, you're going to see how a mother grizzly bear solves the problem of how to keep her cubs safe from male grizzlies. Grizzly bears are not people, but they are mammals. I want you to see how she uses her mammal brain to solve the problem of how to keep her cubs safe.
Grizzly Bear 399, she developed a unique behavior where she actually raises her cubs in proximity to traffic and to humans. And the reason is that male grizzly bears do not like people. They don't like being seen by people. They definitely don't like traffic. Grizzly 399, she learned over time that if she hangs out within 100 yards of the road, she has these people around that are in a way protecting her cubs from the male grizzly bears.